Imagine a medicine so powerful it could destroy the very superbugs that modern antibiotics can't touch. Now imagine that this medicine isn't some cutting-edge pharmaceutical breakthrough from a billion-dollar lab, but a 1,000-year-old recipe, written on ancient parchment using ingredients you might find in your backyard. This isn't science fiction. This is exactly what happened when researchers at the University of Nottingham decided to recreate a medieval eye salve from a 9th century Anglo-Saxon medical text called Bald's Leech Book. The results didn't just surprise them, they shattered everything we thought we knew about the so-called Dark Ages. The ancient remedy, a peculiar mixture of wine, garlic, onion, and bile from a cow's stomach left to ferment in a brass vessel for 9 days, managed to kill 90% of methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, better known as MRSA, one of the most dangerous antibiotic-resistant bacteria plaguing modern hospitals. Let that sink in for a moment. A recipe older than most European nations, written by monks who had never heard of bacteria, proved more effective against a superbug than many of our modern treatments. And here's the truly mind-bending part of this: isn't an isolated incident. Across the globe, from the windswept plateaus of Peru to the mysterious forests of New Zealand, from the scorching Sahara Desert to the ancient ruins of Mesopotamia, archaeologists and researchers are uncovering evidence that fundamentally challenges our understanding of human history. These aren't just interesting artifacts gathering dust in museums. These are revolutionary discoveries that suggest our ancestors possessed knowledge and capabilities that we're only beginning to comprehend, and in some cases still can't fully explain or replicate. Consider this the Inca civilization working without modern medical equipment or understanding of germs achieved brain surgery. Survival rates of 80 to 90% by the 15th century. During the American Civil War, with all the supposed advances of the Industrial Revolution, brain surgery had a survival rate of less than 50%. The Olmec civilization of Central America, over 3,000 years ago, deliberately carved massive stone heads with specific magnetic properties concentrated at precise points, particularly at the forehead. They did this consistently across multiple sculptures, suggesting an understanding of magnetism that predates the Chinese compass by more than a millennium. In Baalbek, Lebanon, ancient builders somehow quarried, transported, and precisely positioned stone blocks weighing up to 1,200 tons. To put that in perspective, that's heavier than 2 fully loaded Airbus A380 aircraft. And these stones were moved without modern machinery, positioned with such accuracy that you can't slip a knife blade between them. The largest stones used in the Great Pyramid of Giza, by comparison, weigh about 80 tons. We're talking about blocks 15 times heavier, and we still don't fully understand how they did it. These discoveries force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our timeline of human advancement might be fundamentally flawed. We've been taught to view history as a steady march of progress, from primitive to advanced, from ignorant to enlightened. But what if that narrative is wrong? What if ancient civilizations possessed sophisticated knowledge that was lost only to be rediscovered centuries or millennia later? What if some of their achievements still surpass our own? Today, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey through 10 archaeological mysteries that don't just puzzle scientists. They actively challenge the foundations of what we think we know about our past. These aren't conspiracy theories or fringe beliefs. These are documented discoveries studied by respected institutions published in peer-reviewed journals, and yet they remain largely unexplained, or their implications largely ignored by mainstream historical narratives. From medical treatments that outperform modern drugs to engineering feats that defy our understanding of ancient capabilities, from astronomical knowledge that shouldn't have existed to technologies that seem impossibly advanced for their time. Each discovery we'll explore today opens a window into a past far more sophisticated and mysterious than we ever imagined. But these mysteries do more than just challenge our understanding of history. They offer something perhaps even more valuable solutions to modern problems. As antibiotic resistance threatens to return us to a pre-penicillin world where simple infections could be death sentences, ancient medical texts might hold the keys to new treatments. As we grapple with sustainable agriculture in arid regions, ancient irrigation systems demonstrate ingenious solutions we're only now beginning to appreciate. As we push the boundaries of data storage and processing, we discover that the Inca created a complex information management system using nothing but knotted strings. Prepare yourself to question everything you thought you knew about human history. Get ready to discover that our ancestors were far more than primitive people stumbling toward civilization. They were innovators, scientists, and engineers whose achievements continue to baffle and inspire us today. And perhaps, most intriguingly, their stories suggest that human knowledge isn't always cumulative. Sometimes we forget more than we learn. Sometimes the past holds secrets that the future desperately needs. So buckle up and join me as we dive deep into these mind-bending archaeological discoveries that prove one thing beyond doubt: the past is far stranger, far more advanced, and far more mysterious than we ever dared to imagine. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because once you hear these stories, you'll never look at ancient history the same way again. The story of archaeology, as we know it today, begins not in dusty tombs or remote dig sites, but in the comfortable drawing rooms of Victorian England, where wealthy collectors displayed their exotic treasures and spun tales of adventure in distant lands. Back then, archaeology was less science and more treasure hunt, driven by national pride and the race to fill museums with the most spectacular finds. The methods were crude, often destructive, and the interpretations were filtered through a lens of cultural superiority that assumed ancient peoples were primitive, superstitious, and intellectually inferior to modern Western civilization. This colonial mindset shaped how we interpreted discoveries for over a century. When 19th-century archaeologists uncovered complex astronomical calculations in Mayan texts, they initially dismissed them as lucky guesses. When they found evidence of ancient brain surgery in Peru, they assumed the patients must have died immediately. When they discovered the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device with complex gears that could calculate astronomical positions, it was literally ignored for decades because it didn't fit the narrative of linear technological progress. But something remarkable has happened in the last few decades. The marriage of archaeology with cutting-edge technology has revolutionized our ability to study the past, and with it, our willingness to acknowledge that ancient civilizations were far more sophisticated than we previously believed. Ground-penetrating radar reveals hidden chambers without lifting a single stone. Satellite imagery uncovers lost cities beneath jungle canopies. DNA analysis tells us not just who these ancient people were, but what they ate, what diseases they suffered from, and how they migrated across continents. Chemical analysis of residues in ancient vessels reveals complex recipes and manufacturing processes. Computer modeling allows us to test theories about how massive monuments were built, or how ancient machines might have functioned. Perhaps most importantly, we've begun to approach ancient knowledge with humility, rather than arrogance. When researchers decided to actually test that Anglo-Saxon eye salve recipe instead of dismissing it as medieval superstition, they discovered something that could help solve one of modern medicine's most pressing crises. When engineers used computer models to analyze Roman concrete, they found it was superior to modern concrete in several ways, actually growing stronger over time rather than degrading. When ethnobotanists started taking indigenous knowledge seriously, they discovered that many traditional remedies contained active compounds that formed the basis for modern pharmaceuticals. This shift in perspective has revealed a startling pattern. Many supposedly primitive ancient technologies were actually ingenious solutions perfectly adapted to their environments and resources. The Nazca people's spiral wells weren't crude attempts at water access. They were sophisticated systems that minimized evaporation in one of the world's driest deserts. The Roman hippocaust wasn't just basic underfloor heating. It was a complex system of thermal management that maintained consistent temperatures while preventing carbon monoxide poisoning. The Inca quipu wasn't merely a simple counting device. It was a sophisticated information system that could encode everything from census data to historical narratives. We're also discovering that ancient peoples were connected in ways we never imagined. The same symbolic motifs appear in cultures separated by vast oceans. Similar architectural techniques emerge independently in civilizations that supposedly had no contact. Mathematical concepts develop in parallel across different continents. These patterns suggest either that human innovation follows predictable paths or that ancient peoples were far more mobile and interconnected than our history books suggest. Consider the magnetic anomalies in Olmec sculptures. The consistency of these magnetic fields, always concentrated at specific anatomical points like the forehead or the navel, suggests deliberate selection and placement. But why some researchers propose these sculptures were used in healing rituals with the magnetic fields thought to have therapeutic properties. Others suggest they were used for divination or spiritual practices. Still others wonder if they served some technological purpose we haven't yet understood. The fact that similar magnetic anomalies have been found in sculptures from other ancient cultures raises even more questions about shared knowledge or parallel discovery. The context of these discoveries becomes even more intriguing when we consider the environmental and social conditions under which they were created. Many of these achievements emerged during periods of climate stress, resource scarcity, or social upheaval. The Nazca irrigation systems were built in response to increasing desertification. The underground cities in Cappadocia were carved during times of invasion and persecution. The medical knowledge preserved in texts like Bald's Leech Book accumulated during devastating plague outbreaks. Necessity, it seems, has always been the mother of invention, and our ancestors were remarkably inventive when faced with existential challenges. This brings us to a profound realization: the trajectory of human knowledge isn't a simple upward curve. It's more like a wave with peaks and troughs, advances and retreats, remembering and forgetting. The Library of Alexandria burned, taking with it countless irreplaceable texts. The Spanish conquistadors destroyed nearly all Mayan codices, erasing centuries of accumulated knowledge. The Islamic Golden Age preserved and expanded upon Greek and Roman knowledge that Europe had largely forgotten during the Middle Ages. Chinese explorers may have reached the Americas decades before Columbus, but their records were destroyed when later emperors turned inward. Today, as we face our own existential challenges, from climate change to antibiotic resistance, from resource depletion to pandemic disease, we're discovering that solutions might lie not just in pushing forward with new technology, but in looking backward to rediscover what we've forgotten. Ancient agricultural techniques that rebuild soil instead of depleting it. Traditional architecture that maintains comfortable temperatures without fossil fuels. Medicinal preparations that work through synergistic combinations rather than single active compounds. Social organizations that sustained communities for millennia without depleting their resource bases. The mysteries we're about to explore aren't just curiosities from a distant past. They're pieces of a larger puzzle about human capability, creativity, and resilience. They remind us that our ancestors weren't waiting for us to enlighten them. They were solving complex problems with elegant solutions we're only now beginning to appreciate. They suggest that progress isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about remembering what we've forgotten. As we delve into these specific cases, keep in mind that each represents not just a single achievement, but a whole system of knowledge that supported it. Behind every ancient medical treatment was an understanding of botany, chemistry, and human physiology. Behind every megalithic structure was knowledge of mathematics, engineering, and project management. Behind every astronomical calculation was generations of careful observation and record-keeping. These weren't isolated breakthroughs by lone geniuses. They were the culmination of accumulated cultural knowledge refined over centuries and adapted to local conditions. The question that haunts many researchers isn't just how ancient peoples achieved these things, but why we forgot. What circumstances led to the loss of so much knowledge? And perhaps more urgently, what knowledge are we losing today that future generations will have to rediscover? These aren't just academic questions. In an age where digital storage makes us feel like information is permanent, we might be more vulnerable to knowledge loss than ever before. A single electromagnetic pulse could erase more information than the burning of all ancient libraries combined. Ancient medicine beyond its time. The Anglo-Saxon superbug killer. When microbiologist Freya Harrison stood in her University of Nottingham laboratory in 2015 staring at the petri dish before her, she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. The bacterial colonies of methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, one of the most feared superbugs in modern medicine, were dying. Not just reduced or weakened, but obliterated with 90% effectiveness. The killer wasn't some new synthetic antibiotic or cutting-edge pharmaceutical compound. It was a 1,000-year-old eye salve recipe she'd recreated from Bald's Leech Book, a medical text written in Old English around the 9th century. The recipe itself sounds more like something from a witch's cauldron than a medical laboratory. Equal parts garlic and a second allium, either onion or leek, finely chopped and crushed in a mortar for 2 minutes. Add 25 milliliters of English wine specifically from a historic vineyard to maintain authenticity, and bile salts from a cow's stomach. Mix everything in a brass vessel, and here's the crucial part that initially puzzled researchers: let it stand for 9 days at room temperature. The brass vessel wasn't just a random container choice. Researchers discovered that the copper in the brass plays a crucial antimicrobial role, contributing to the mixture's effectiveness. The 9-day waiting period allows for a complex fermentation process that creates compounds not present in the individual ingredients. What makes this discovery particularly staggering is that MRSA kills more Americans each year than AIDS, and it's becoming increasingly resistant to our last resort antibiotics. Modern pharmaceutical companies have spent billions trying to develop new antibiotics to combat these superbugs. Yet here was a medieval remedy that outperformed many modern treatments. When the team tested the individual ingredients separately, none showed significant antibacterial activity. It was only when combined in the exact proportions and left for the precise fermentation period specified in the ancient text that the mixture became lethal to bacteria. This suggests that Anglo-Saxon healers understood the principle of synergy, where ingredients work together to create effects greater than their individual properties, centuries before modern medicine formally recognized this concept. The historical context makes this even more remarkable. The Anglo-Saxons lived in what we dismissively call the Dark Ages, a time supposedly characterized by ignorance and superstition. Yet Bald's Leech Book contains hundreds of remedies, many showing sophisticated understanding of diagnosis and treatment. The book includes instructions for surgical procedures, dietary recommendations, and even what appears to be an understanding of contagion advising isolation for certain conditions. The language used varies in certainty, with some remedies described as always effective, while others are noted as sometimes helpful, suggesting systematic observation of outcomes over time. Dr. Christina Lee, the Anglo-Saxon scholar who first brought the recipe to the scientists' attention, has uncovered layers of sophistication in the text that were previously overlooked. The manuscript shows evidence of being a working document with marginalia in multiple hands, suggesting it was updated and refined over generations. Some remedies show clear influences from Mediterranean and Islamic medicine, indicating that Anglo-Saxon England was part of a broader network of medical knowledge exchange. The text includes dosage adjustments for different patient types, warnings about side effects, and even what appear to be contraindications for certain conditions. But here's where it gets truly intriguing. The recipe's effectiveness against MRSA wasn't a lucky accident. When tested against other bacteria, including those that cause foot infections in diabetics, the Anglo-Saxon remedy proved consistently effective. The text specifically recommends this remedy for what it calls a lump or swelling in the eye, which perfectly describes a sty often caused by Staphylococcus aureus, the very bacteria the remedy kills so effectively. This suggests the Anglo-Saxons weren't randomly mixing ingredients, but had identified specific treatments for specific pathogens without ever seeing the bacteria themselves. The team at Nottingham has now tested over 30 remedies from Bald's Leech Book with a success rate that defies statistical probability if these were random combinations. A remedy for what the text calls lung disease showed activity against Mycobacterium tuberculosis. A treatment for infected wounds proved effective against Streptococcus pyogenes. Each successful test reinforces the conclusion that Anglo-Saxon physicians possessed systematic knowledge of antimicrobial treatments centuries before the discovery of germs. The implications extend far beyond this single remedy. If one randomly selected recipe from a 1,000-year-old text can outperform modern antibiotics, what other medical treasures lie hidden in ancient manuscripts? Inca brain surgery mastery. High in the Peruvian Andes, in a storage room at the National Museum of Archaeology, Anthropology and History in Lima sit hundreds of ancient skulls that tell a story so remarkable that when researchers first published their findings, many in the medical community simply refused to believe them. These skulls dating from 400 BCE to 1500 CE show clear evidence of trepanation surgical holes cut into living skulls, with one astounding detail: the vast majority show signs of healing, meaning the patient survived not just days or weeks after the surgery, but often years. The numbers are staggering and have been verified by multiple independent research teams. Analysis of 859 trepanned skulls from various pre-Columbian Peruvian cultures shows survival rates that improved dramatically over time. During the earliest period, around 400 BCE, roughly 40% of patients survived. By the Inca period in the 1400s, the survival rate had reached between 80 and 90%. To put this in perspective, during the American Civil War in the 1860s, with supposedly modern medical knowledge, survival rates for similar procedures were less than 50%. During World War I, with antiseptics and anesthesia, available cranial surgery, survival rates were still only about 50 to 60%. Somehow the Inca and their predecessors had mastered brain surgery using stone tools to a degree that wouldn't be matched by Western medicine for another 400 years. The techniques themselves were remarkably sophisticated and evolved over time. Researchers have identified 4 distinct methods: circular grooving, where a round piece of bone was carefully carved out; linear cutting, creating rectangular openings; boring and cutting, combining drilling with incision; and scraping, gradually wearing away the bone. Each technique had specific advantages and was apparently chosen based on the type of injury or condition being treated. The precision is extraordinary. Tool marks show consistent pressure and angles suggesting steady hands and extensive practice. Many skulls show multiple trepanations, suggesting patients returned for additional procedures, presumably because the first one had been successful. One skull shows 5 separate trepanations, all fully healed, meaning the patient survived at least 5 brain surgeries. Physical anthropologist John Varano, who has studied these skulls for decades, points out that the Inca surgeons clearly understood crucial medical principles that took Western medicine centuries to discover. They avoided areas where cutting would cause immediate death or paralysis, suggesting knowledge of brain anatomy. They developed techniques to prevent infection, possibly using botanical antiseptics from coca leaves, wild tobacco, or other plants with antimicrobial properties. They managed pain likely with coca-based preparations or fermented corn beer that could reach alcohol levels sufficient for anesthesia. Most impressively, they seem to understand the importance of not penetrating the dura mater, the membrane protecting the brain, as skulls showing this penetration have much lower survival rates. Recent chemical analysis of the bone around trepanation sites has revealed traces of compounds consistent with antiseptic plants, including tannins and alkaloids known to have antimicrobial properties. Some skulls show evidence of what appears to be deliberate cauterization around the surgical site, suggesting the use of heated instruments to control bleeding and sterilize the wound. The bone regrowth patterns indicate that patients received post-operative care with wounds kept clean and possibly dressed with medicinal preparations. But why were they performing so many brain surgeries? The evidence suggests multiple reasons, showing this wasn't primitive desperation, but systematic medical practice. Many trepanned skulls show signs of head trauma, likely from warfare, where the Incas' favorite weapons were slings and star-headed maces that caused skull fractures. The surgery would remove bone fragments and relieve pressure on the brain. But not all trepanations were for trauma. Some appear to have been attempts to treat chronic headaches, epilepsy, or mental illness. The location and type of trepanation often corresponds to the apparent medical condition, suggesting diagnostic sophistication. The knowledge wasn't confined to a few specialists in the capital. The wide distribution of trepanned skulls across the Inca Empire, from coastal regions to high mountain settlements, suggests numerous surgeons possessed this skill. Training must have been systematic and effective, passing knowledge from master to student across generations. Some researchers believe they practiced on dead bodies or perhaps animals before operating on living patients. The improvement in survival rates over time indicates not just accumulated experience, but active refinement of techniques and sharing of knowledge across the empire. Chinese natural gas technology. 2,000 years ahead. In the bamboo forests of Sichuan province, China, local farmers have long told stories about fire wells that their ancestors used to boil brine and extract salt. For years, historians dismissed these as exaggerations or misunderstandings of simpler technologies. But when industrial archaeologists began seriously investigating these claims in the 1980s, they uncovered evidence of one of history's most sophisticated pre-industrial energy systems, one that predated similar Western technology by over 2 millennia. Archaeological excavations have revealed that by at least 400 BCE, the Chinese were drilling wells specifically to extract natural gas, using it for industrial processes on a scale that wouldn't be matched in the West until the 19th century. These weren't shallow wells accidentally striking gas pockets. They were deliberate, deep drilling operations reaching depths of up to 1,000 meters, deeper than most modern water wells. The drilling technology itself was remarkable. They used bamboo cables and iron drill bits employing a percussion method, where the bit was repeatedly lifted and dropped, slowly pulverizing rock. A single well could take years to complete, requiring coordinated teams working in shifts around the clock. But drilling was just the beginning. The Chinese developed an entire infrastructure for natural gas extraction transport, and use that demonstrates engineering sophistication we associate with the Industrial Revolution. They created bamboo pipelines sealing joints with mud and lime to prevent leaks that carried gas for distances exceeding several kilometers. These pipelines included safety features like pressure release valves, made from leather flaps that would open if pressure exceeded safe levels. They developed separate networks for gas and brine, preventing dangerous mixing. They even created what we would recognize as industrial zones where multiple gas wells fed centralized processing facilities. The scale of operations was staggering. Historical records from the Han Dynasty describe facilities producing over 600 tons of salt, annually requiring enormous amounts of natural gas for evaporation. Conservative estimates suggest they were extracting and burning millions of cubic feet of natural gas per year. This wasn't experimental or small-scale. This was industrial production supporting a significant portion of China's economy. Salt was crucial for food preservation and chemical processes, and the Sichuan gas fields provided a competitive advantage that shaped regional politics and trade for centuries. Recent analysis of ancient Chinese texts has revealed sophisticated understanding of what they called fire-air. They distinguished between different types of gas, noting that some burned with different colors or intensities. They understood that gas was lighter than air and would rise, leading them to develop collection hoods and storage systems. They recognized the danger of gas accumulation in enclosed spaces and developed ventilation protocols that wouldn't look out of place in modern safety manuals. They even documented what we now recognize as carbon monoxide poisoning and developed procedures to prevent it. The technological innovations extended beyond simple extraction and burning. The Chinese developed specialized burners for different applications, multi-stage evaporation systems to maximize efficiency, and methods for controlling flame temperature through gas-air mixture adjustment. They created portable gas systems storing compressed gas in leather bags for lighting and small-scale heating. Some texts describe using natural gas for lighting temples and public buildings, predating gas street lighting in Europe by nearly 2,000 years. What makes this achievement even more remarkable is its sustainability. Many of these gas wells operated continuously for centuries. The Shenhai well drilled in 1835 using traditional techniques inherited from ancient methods still produces gas today. This longevity required understanding of reservoir management, preventing over-extraction that would deplete fields and maintaining infrastructure across generations. The Chinese developed legal frameworks for gas rights, technical standards for pipeline construction, and training systems for specialized workers, creating an entire industry that flourished for over 2 millennia. Impossible engineering feats, the megalithic blocks of Baalbek. In the quarry, half a mile from the ancient temple complex of Baalbek in Lebanon, lies a stone so massive that it defies comprehension. Known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, this single block of limestone weighs approximately 1,000 tons, equivalent to about 200 adult elephants or 2 fully loaded Boeing 747 aircraft. But here's what makes archaeologists lose sleep. This monstrosity isn't even the largest stone at the site, and it was apparently abandoned because it was considered too small or flawed for its intended purpose. The Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek sits on a platform containing 3 of the largest stones ever used in construction anywhere ever. Called the Trilithon, these 3 blocks weigh between 800 and 1,000 tons each, and were somehow transported from the quarry, lifted 20 feet into the air, and placed with such precision that you cannot insert a knife blade between them. Above and below these giants are blocks weighing a mere 350 tons, fitted together like a 3-dimensional puzzle that has survived earthquakes that leveled nearby structures. For comparison, the largest stones in the Great Pyramid of Giza weigh about 80 tons, and we still debate how those were moved. The heaviest stone moved in modern times, the Thunderstone in Russia, serving as the base for the bronze horseman statue, weighs 1,500 tons and required specially designed equipment and hundreds of workers to move it just a few miles. In 2014, the German Archaeological Institute made a discovery that rewrote the record books. They uncovered an even larger stone in the quarry, weighing an estimated 1,650 tons and measuring 64 feet long. This discovery, dubbed the Forgotten Stone, shows clear evidence of having been shaped and prepared for transport. Tool marks indicate it was near completion when work stopped, with precise angles cut and surfaces dressed smooth. The stone wasn't abandoned due to a flaw or crack. It appears work simply stopped mid-project, as if the builders suddenly left or lost the capability to move it. Recent archaeological excavations have revealed the true complexity of the Baalbek platform. Ground-penetrating radar shows that what we see on the surface is just part of a much larger underground complex. Chambers and passages extend deep beneath the temple, some appearing to predate the known Roman construction by centuries or millennia. One chamber contains what appears to be an even larger foundation stone, completely buried, its full dimensions still unknown. Core samples from beneath the platform have yielded organic material that carbon dating places at 9000 BCE, suggesting the site has been considered sacred for over 11,000 years. Analysis of the stone surfaces has revealed something unexpected that challenges our understanding of ancient stoneworking techniques. The surfaces show evidence of vitrification where the stone has been turned to glass through extreme heat. This same phenomenon has been observed at other megalithic sites worldwide, from the Scottish vitrified forts to the precisely cut stones of Pumapunku in Bolivia. The vitrification at Baalbek is localized to cut surfaces and joint faces, ruling out natural phenomena like lightning strikes or forest fires. Some researchers propose this was caused by an unknown cutting technique involving focused heat, possibly using parabolic mirrors to concentrate sunlight to temperatures exceeding 200 degrees Celsius. Others suggest friction from rapid cutting tools we haven't imagined, perhaps using resonant frequencies to fracture stone along precise lines. German engineer Tibor Lengyel has spent decades studying Baalbek and has proposed that the builders used a technique now lost, involving temporary chemical softening of limestone. His analysis shows unusual mineral distributions in the surface layer of the stones consistent with exposure to specific acids that could theoretically soften limestone enough to be carved like clay before rehardening. Ancient texts from various cultures describe stones being softened for working previously dismissed as mythology, but perhaps describing a real technique. However, attempts to replicate this process have so far failed to achieve the scale necessary for blocks this size. The Sacsayhuaman Fortress Precision, perched above the ancient Inca capital of Cusco at an altitude of 3,700 meters, sets Sacsayhuaman, a fortress that makes modern engineers question everything they know about construction without modern tools. The fortress consists of 3 parallel walls in a zigzag formation extending over 540 meters, built from stones so precisely fitted that engineers describe them as appearing to have been poured into place, like concrete. But these aren't concrete. They're individual stones, some weighing over 200 tons carved, and placed with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. What makes Sacsayhuaman extraordinary isn't just the size of the stones, but their impossible precision. The joints between stones are so tight that you cannot insert a human hair between them, yet these aren't simple rectangular blocks. Each stone has a unique irregular shape with multiple angles, sometimes having 12 or more sides fitting with its neighbors like a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. Modern analysis shows that each joint face matches its partner with less than 0.5 mm variation across surfaces, sometimes measuring several square meters. Achieving this precision with modern diamond-tipped power tools would be challenging. Achieving it with bronze and stone tools should be impossible. Recent laser scanning has revealed that the precision extends beyond what's visible. The stones aren't just fitted on their visible faces. They're sculpted to interlock in 3 dimensions with tongues and grooves, internal angles, and weight-bearing surfaces that distribute forces throughout the structure. This creates what engineers call a monolithic behavior, where the entire wall acts as a single unit during earthquakes. This explains how Sacsayhuaman has survived earthquakes that destroyed Spanish colonial buildings built centuries later. But it doesn't explain how the Inca achieved this precision. Dr. Jean-Pierre Protzin from the University of California, Berkeley, spent years trying to replicate Inca stoneworking techniques. While he successfully demonstrated how smaller stones could be shaped using stone hammers, he admitted complete failure when attempting to explain the precision joints of Sacsayhuaman. The amount of material that would need to be removed to achieve such perfect fits would be enormous, and the trial and error process would be visible in the archaeological record as millions of stone chips. Yet excavations around Sacsayhuaman have found surprisingly little stone debris, suggesting the stones were either shaped elsewhere or using a technique that produced minimal waste. Chemical analysis of the joint surfaces has revealed microscopic glazing similar to that found at Baalbek and other megalithic sites. Some researchers propose this indicates the use of focused solar energy or chemical treatments to achieve precision. Others suggest the Inca possessed sonic or vibrational technology, noting that local legends consistently describe stones being moved and shaped by sound. While this sounds fantastical, recent experiments with acoustic levitation and ultrasonic drilling show that sound can indeed be used to manipulate and shape matter in ways that would have seemed magical to earlier generations. The construction logistics alone boggle the mind. The stones came from quarries up to 35 kilometers away across rivers and up steep mountain slopes. Moving a 200-ton block on level ground with modern equipment is challenging. Moving it up a mountain at high altitude should be impossible with rope and wooden rollers. Yet the Inca not only moved these blocks, but placed them with such precision that their final positioning must have been planned from the quarry. Each stone had to be cut to its exact final dimensions before transport, as the precision fitting wouldn't allow for significant on-site modification. The Nan Madol Ocean Venice, rising from the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia, sits Nan Madol, a city that shouldn't exist. Built on a coral reef, it consists of 92 artificial islands constructed from massive basalt columns and coral fill connected by a network of canals, earning it the nickname Venice of the Pacific. But unlike Venice, which was built using locally available materials and conventional techniques, Nan Madol was constructed from approximately 750,000 tons of basalt columns that had to be transported from quarries on the opposite side of Pohnpei across open ocean. The basalt columns formed from cooled lava in prismatic shapes weigh between 5 and 50 tons each. They're stacked log cabin style to create walls up to 25 feet high and 17 feet thick. The precision of construction rivals anything found in more famous ancient sites. The columns are fitted so carefully that the structures have survived typhoons, tsunamis, and earthquakes for approximately 900 years. But here's the engineering puzzle. Pohnpei has no tradition of stone construction before or after Nanmedol. No draft animals, no wheels, and the population during construction is estimated at less than 25,000 people. Marine archaeologist Dr. Mark McCoy used uranium-thorium dating on coral files to establish that construction began around 1180 CE and continued for about 400 years. This means that generations of builders maintained consistent construction techniques and architectural vision across centuries. The city wasn't built all at once, but grew according to what appears to be a master plan, with consistent orientation, canal widths, and architectural proportions maintained throughout the construction period. This suggests sophisticated project management and knowledge transfer systems that we don't usually associate with Pacific Island cultures. The logistics of construction remain completely unexplained. Local oral traditions insist the stones were moved using magic, specifically that they were made to fly through the air by priests using incantations. While archaeology doesn't accept magical explanations, no convincing alternative has been proposed. Experiments with rafts have shown that transporting 50-ton basalt columns across open ocean on wooden rafts is theoretically possible, but practically suicidal. The columns would need to be perfectly balanced, or they'd roll, capsizing any raft. The coral reefs surrounding Nanmadol would destroy any raft attempting to approach, yet the columns were somehow delivered and placed with precision. Recent underwater archaeology has added another layer of mystery. Sonar scanning has revealed that Nanmadol extends underwater with perfectly constructed walls descending to depths of up to 30 meters. These underwater portions show the same construction techniques as the above-water structures, suggesting they were built on dry land. But sea levels haven't been that low in this region for at least 10,000 years, long before human habitation of Pohnpei. Either the underwater structures are far older than believed, implying a lost civilization, or massive geological subsidence occurred, which should have destroyed the above-water portions. Lost technologies and forgotten knowledge. The Antikythera mechanism, ancient Greek computer. On a storm-lashed day in 1901, sponge diver Elias Stadiatis was descending to the Mediterranean seabed off the tiny Greek island of Antikythera when he made a discovery that would challenge everything we thought we knew about ancient technology. At a depth of 45 meters, he found the wreck of an ancient Roman ship, its cargo scattered across the ocean floor. Among the salvaged treasures lay several corroded bronze lumps that seemed unremarkable. For months they sat in storage at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, until someone noticed something extraordinary. One of the lumps had gear wheels embedded in it. This wasn't just any gear wheel. As researchers carefully cleaned and studied the artifact over the following decades, they uncovered a mechanism of such complexity that many initially refused to believe it was ancient. The device contained at least 37 meshing bronze gears, with more recent X-ray tomography revealing the total might be as high as 70 gears. Some gears have teeth so fine that they're barely a millimeter wide, requiring precision manufacturing that we associate with 18th century clockmaking. The largest gear has 2.3 teeth, a prime number that corresponds exactly to the number of lunar months in the Saros cycle used to predict eclipses. This wasn't decoration or coincidence. This was precision engineering designed for complex astronomical calculations. The mechanism's capabilities are staggering. Dating to approximately 150 BCE, it could calculate the positions of the Sun, Moon, and likely all 5 planets known to the ancient Greeks. It could predict solar and lunar eclipses decades in advance, accounting for the elliptical orbit of the Moon with remarkable accuracy. It tracked the metonic cycle, the 19-year period after which lunar phases repeat on the same dates. It even included a dial for the 4-year Olympiad cycle, telling users when the Olympic and other Pan-Hellenic Games would occur. The device included differential gearing, a technology we didn't think existed until the 13th century, over a millennium later. Professor Michael Edmonds from Cardiff University, who led a major study of the mechanism, calculated that the device could predict lunar positions with an error of only 1 degree in 500 years. This accuracy required not just mechanical precision, but centuries of astronomical observations to generate the mathematical models the mechanism embodied. The inscriptions on the device, over 500 characters of ancient Greek text, painstakingly revealed through advanced imaging, include instructions for use, descriptions of planetary cycles, and references to astronomical theories. One inscription appears to reference the theories of Hipparchus, the greatest Greek astronomer, leading some researchers to speculate he might have been involved in its design. The knowledge required to create the Antikythera mechanism didn't develop in isolation. It represents the culmination of centuries of Greek astronomy, mathematics, and metallurgy. The astronomical data alone would have required generations of careful observation. The mathematical models needed to convert celestial cycles into gear ratios required sophisticated understanding of both astronomy and mechanical principles. The manufacturing precision required advanced metallurgy and tool-making, yet all this knowledge was apparently lost. No similar mechanism survived from antiquity, and no clear descriptions of how to build them. Medieval clockmakers had to reinvent much of this technology from scratch. The Damascus Steel Mystery. For over 1,000 years, from approximately 300 CE to 1700 CE, smiths in Damascus, Syria produced steel blades of such exceptional quality that they became the stuff of legend. Damascus steel swords could allegedly cut through a rifle barrel slice, a hair falling across the blade, and maintain their edge after cutting through bone and armor. The steel showed a distinctive watered pattern like flowing water or wood grain that was as beautiful as it was functional. Despite centuries of attempts, modern metallurgists have been unable to fully recreate authentic Damascus steel, making it one of history's great technological mysteries. What made Damascus steel extraordinary wasn't just its performance, but the combination of properties that should be mutually exclusive. The steel was both hard and flexible, maintaining a sharp edge while being able to bend without breaking. Modern steel requires trade-offs between these properties. You can make steel hard or flexible, but achieving both requires complex modern alloys and heat treatments. Damascus steel achieved this with technology available in medieval forges using techniques that were closely guarded, secrets passed down through generations of smiths. Recent analysis using electron microscopy has revealed why Damascus steel was so exceptional. The steel contains carbon nanotubes and nanowire structures that weren't officially discovered until 1991. These nanostructures formed through a still not fully understood process involving specific impurities in the source, steel and precise forging techniques, created a material with properties that anticipated modern superalloys. The carbon nanotubes increased the steel's strength dramatically while maintaining flexibility. They also contributed to the steel's legendary ability to maintain an edge, as the nanostructures prevented crack propagation that causes blade dulling. The source material for Damascus steel was Wootz steel imported from India and Sri Lanka. But Wootz steel alone didn't create Damascus steel. It required specific forging techniques that transformed the material's structure. The process involved repeated folding, heating, and cooling cycles that had to be performed at precise temperatures with specific timing. Too hot and the nanostructures wouldn't form. Too cool and the steel wouldn't forge properly. The exact techniques were trade secrets never written down, passed orally from master to apprentice. The loss of Damascus steel technology around 1700 CE remains unexplained. Some historians suggest the trade routes for Wootz steel were disrupted. Others propose that subtle changes in the ore sources altered the steel's composition enough to prevent the traditional techniques from working. Still others suggest that the knowledge was deliberately suppressed or lost through political upheaval. Whatever the cause, by the 19th century Damascus steel was a lost art. Despite numerous attempts using modern technology and historical research, no one has successfully recreated steel with all the properties of historical Damascus steel. We can make steel that looks similar or performs similarly in some ways, but not the complete package that made Damascus steel legendary. Roman concrete that heals itself. The Pantheon in Rome has stood for nearly 2,000 years, its massive concrete dome still the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. Harbor structures built by the Romans at Caesarea Maritima have survived 2 millennia of waves and storms. Roman bridges still carry traffic. Meanwhile, modern reinforced concrete structures often show signs of degradation after just 50 years. This isn't just a testament to Roman engineering. It's evidence that Roman concrete was fundamentally different from, and in many ways, superior to modern concrete. For decades, engineers assumed Roman concrete's durability was due to lucky material choices or environmental factors. But recent research has revealed that Roman concrete has properties that seem almost magical. By modern standards, it's self-healing. When cracks form in Roman concrete, they don't propagate and widen as in modern concrete. Instead, they seal themselves. The concrete actually grows stronger over time, incorporating seawater and developing new mineral structures that reinforce the original material. This isn't just durability. It's active self-repair that continues for centuries. The secret lies in the Roman concrete recipe, which was fundamentally different from modern concrete. The Romans mixed lime and volcanic ash to create a binder, then added volcanic rock as aggregate. The key ingredient was volcanic ash from a specific region near Naples, which contains aluminous tobermarite and philipsite, rare minerals that form long plate-like crystals. When seawater infiltrates Roman maritime concrete, it reacts with these minerals to create new crystals that literally grow through the concrete filling cracks and binding the material together more strongly. Dr. Marie Jackson from the University of Utah, who has spent years analyzing Roman concrete, discovered that the manufacturing process was as important as the ingredients. The Romans mixed their concrete at relatively low temperatures compared to modern Portland cement, which is heated to 1450 degrees Celsius. This lower temperature preserved the volcanic ash's reactive properties. They also used less water in their mix, creating a denser, less porous material. The mixing process itself was different, with evidence suggesting the Romans used a hot mixing technique, where lime and water were combined to generate heat, activating chemical reactions that don't occur in modern, cold mixing methods. Recent attempts to recreate Roman concrete have been partially successful, but highlight how much knowledge was lost. We can identify the ingredients and observe the chemical reactions, but replicating the exact process remains elusive. The Romans didn't have our understanding of chemistry, yet they developed, through centuries of empirical observation, a material superior to what we produce with all our scientific knowledge. The environmental implications are staggering. Modern cement production accounts for 8% of global CO2 emissions. Roman concrete required far less energy to produce and lasted far longer, making it vastly more sustainable. Mysterious ancient knowledge systems. The quipu, the Inca's fiber computer. In the vault of the Museo Nacional de Arqueología, Antropología e Historia del Perú, Curator Claudia Martinez carefully lifts a bundle of colored strings that looks deceptively simple, almost like a decorative tassel or an elaborate macrame project. But this is a quipu, and according to growing evidence, it might represent one of humanity's most ingenious information management systems. A fiber-based computer that allowed the Inca Empire to administer a territory spanning 2,500 miles without a written language. At first glance, a quipu consists of a primary cord from which hang dozens or sometimes hundreds of pendant strings. These pendants can have subsidiary strings attached, creating a hierarchical structure. The strings bear knots, thousands of them tied at specific intervals. For decades, researchers assumed quipus were simply accounting devices, recording numbers for census, taxation, and inventory. But recent breakthroughs in decipherment suggest they encoded far more historical narratives, astronomical observations, calendar systems, legal codes, and possibly even poetry and songs. Harvard researcher Gary Urton, who has created a database of over 900 quipus, argues that these devices represent a binary code predating computer science by 500 years. Each knot, he suggests, could encode up to 7 bits of information through its position, type, direction, of spin color, of thread, and relationship to other knots. With hundreds of strings and thousands of knots, a single quipu could theoretically store as much information as a small book. The color coding alone is remarkably complex, with some quipus using over 60 different colors and color combinations, each potentially representing different categories of information or narrative elements. The mathematical sophistication is undeniable. The knot positions follow a decimal system with different knot types, representing units, tens, hundreds, and so on. But beyond simple counting, quipus could perform calculations. Anthropologist Sabine Heiland discovered that some quipus contain what appear to be statistical analyses calculating averages, percentages, and ratios. One quipu from the village of San Juan de Colata contains information that village elders claim represents a 200-year history of their community, encoded in the knots and colors. Recent discoveries have revealed specialized types of quipus that challenge our understanding of their capabilities. Narrative quipus, appear to encode non-numerical information, possibly using knot combinations as syllables or ideograms. Calendar quipus track complex astronomical cycles with accuracy, matching European astronomical tables. Legal quipus might have recorded laws and judicial decisions. Some researchers even suggest musical quipus encoded songs with knot positions representing notes and string colors, indicating instruments or voices. The tragedy is that the Spanish destroyed most quipus as pagan artifacts, and the knowledge of how to read them fully was lost within a generation or two of the conquest. Of the thousands that must have existed, only about 600 survive today. Modern efforts to decode them face enormous challenges. Without a Rosetta Stone, a document that translates quipu to a known language, researchers must work backwards from Spanish colonial records that sometimes reference quipu information. Machine learning algorithms are now being employed to identify patterns across multiple quipus, searching for consistent encoding schemes. The Voynich manuscript enigma. In 1912, book dealer Wilfrid Voynich purchased a mysterious medieval codex from a Jesuit college in Italy. What he acquired would become the most studied and least understood manuscript in human history. The Voynich manuscript consists of 240 pages of text written in an unknown script accompanied by bizarre illustrations of unidentifiable plants, astronomical diagrams, and naked figures bathing in green pools connected by elaborate pipe networks. Carbon dating confirms it was created around 1420, but everything else about it remains a complete mystery. The text consists of over 170,000 characters, forming approximately 35,000 words, written in an alphabet of 20 to 25 distinct symbols that no one has been able to decode. It's not for lack of trying. The world's best cryptographers, including those who broke the Nazi Enigma code and decrypted ancient Linear B, have failed to crack it. The NSA and FBI have tried. AI systems have analyzed it. Yet the manuscript stubbornly guards its secrets, neither yielding to analysis nor being proven a hoax. Statistical analysis reveals that the text has properties consistent with natural language. It follows Zipf's law, where word frequency decreases predictably. It shows the expected redundancy and entropy of real language. The character distribution matches known languages more closely than random text. Yet it matches no known language, living or dead. Some words appear only in certain sections, suggesting specialized vocabulary, like a medical or botanical text would have. But if it's a real language, why has no other example ever been found? The illustrations deepen the mystery rather than solving it. The botanical section shows 113 plant drawings, but botanists can't identify a single one with certainty. Some appear to be chimeric, combining features from different plants, or possibly showing plants that are now extinct. The astronomical section includes zodiac symbols, but with anomalies, Aries and Taurus appear twice, and there are unusual star patterns that don't match any known astronomical observations from the 15th century. The biological section shows what might be human anatomy, but distorted beyond medical understanding. Recent multispectral imaging has revealed previously invisible details. Hidden text appears in some margins, seemingly in Latin, but too faded to read completely. Some illustrations show underdrawings different from the final images, suggesting the artist changed their mind or was copying from another source. Chemical analysis of the inks and paints shows they're consistent with 15th century European materials, ruling out modern forgery. but not explaining the content. The purpose and origin of the manuscript remain completely unknown. Some researchers propose it's a medieval medical text encrypted to protect trade secrets. Others suggest it's an elaborate hoax, though the consistency and complexity argue against this. Still others propose it's written in a constructed language, a philosophical experiment, like those created by medieval scholars. The most intriguing theory is that it represents knowledge from a lost culture or tradition preserved in a script and language that died with its last practitioners. The Piri Reis map impossibility. In 1929, scholars working in the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul made a discovery that would challenge our understanding of ancient geographical knowledge. They found a map drawn on gazelle skin parchment created in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. The map showed the western coasts of Europe and Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and at the bottom a landmass that appeared to be Antarctica. The problem Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and the coastline shown on the map depicts it without ice, as it hasn't been seen for at least 6,000 years. The map explicitly states it was compiled from 20 older source maps, including charts captured from a Spanish sailor who had sailed with Columbus, and ancient maps from the time of Alexander the Great. This isn't speculation. Piri Reis wrote detailed notes on the map itself, explaining his sources. He claimed some source maps dated back to the 4th century BCE. If true, this suggests ancient civilizations possessed geographical knowledge far exceeding what mainstream history accepts. What makes the map particularly puzzling is its accuracy in some areas and strange distortions in others. The coast of South America is depicted with remarkable precision, including the Andes Mountains, which weren't explored by Europeans until decades after the map was made. The Amazon River is shown with 2 source tributaries, a detail not confirmed by European explorers until much later. Yet the map also shows significant distortions, with Cuba depicted as part of the mainland and portions of the coastline stretched or compressed. The Antarctic coastline controversy has raged for decades. Professor Charles Hapgood from Keene State College spent years studying the map and concluded it showed Antarctica's Queen Maud land coast as it exists beneath the ice. His analysis suggested the source maps were created using advanced surveying techniques, possibly including spherical trigonometry, which wouldn't be developed in Europe until centuries later. Seismic surveys of Antarctica conducted in 1958 appeared to confirm that the coastline shown on the Piri Reis map matched the subglacial topography. Critics argue the supposed Antarctic coastline is actually the South American coast, bent out of shape by projection errors. They point out that the map lacks any clear indication of the Drake Passage between South America and Antarctica. But supporters note that if the map dates from a time when sea levels were lower, the Drake Passage might have been narrower, or filled with ice, making it appear as a continuous coastline. The debate remains unresolved, with each side presenting compelling evidence. Natural anomalies and ancient disasters. The Tunguska event's ancient precedents on June 30, 1908. An explosion equivalent to 1,000 Hiroshima bombs flattened 2,000 square kilometers of Siberian forest near the Tunguska River. The blast was heard 1,000 kilometers away, and atmospheric pressure waves circled the globe twice. Yet no impact crater was found, and theories about what caused it range from a meteorite air burst to more exotic explanations. But recent archaeological discoveries suggest the Tunguska event wasn't unique. Similar events have occurred throughout human history, possibly shaping ancient civilizations in ways we're only beginning to understand. Analysis of ancient texts and archaeological sites has revealed descriptions and evidence of what appear to be similar airburst events. The ancient Indian epic Mahabharata describes weapons that could level entire cities with blasts of light and heat, leaving shadows burned into walls. While often interpreted as mythology or poetic exaggeration, some researchers note the descriptions match the effects of aerial explosions. Archaeological sites in the Middle East show layers of melted glass and fused sand dated to around 3700 BCE, consistent with exposure to extreme heat from above, rather than conventional fires. The most compelling evidence comes from Syria, where archaeologists have found what they call the 12800 BCE event layer at multiple sites. This layer contains microscopic diamonds, melted glass spherules, and elevated levels of iridium, all indicators of an extraterrestrial impact or airburst. The layer coincides with the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to Ice Age conditions that lasted 300 years and caused massive extinctions. Some researchers propose that multiple airburst events from a fragmenting comet caused this climate catastrophe and the collapse of early human civilizations. Recent satellite analysis has identified hundreds of possible airburst sites worldwide recognized by circular features, anomalous geology, and magnetic signatures. Many align with ancient settlements that were mysteriously abandoned or destroyed. The pattern suggests Earth experiences significant airburst events far more frequently than previously thought, perhaps every few centuries rather than every few millennia. This has profound implications for understanding ancient history and assessing future risks. The Sahara's hidden water mystery. The Sahara Desert. Earth's largest hot desert holds a secret that defies its arid reputation. Beneath its sands lie vast reserves of fresh water, some of the largest aquifers on the planet. But these aren't normal aquifers replenished by rainfall. They're fossil water trapped underground for thousands or even millions of years from a time when the Sahara was green. Recent discoveries suggest ancient civilizations knew about and exploited these hidden waters using technologies we're only now rediscovering. Satellite radar imaging has revealed thousands of prehistoric river channels, lake beds, and springs hidden beneath the sand. These paleo-channels align with ancient trade routes and settlement patterns, suggesting ancient peoples knew where to find water in what seems like featureless desert. More remarkably, many modern oases and wells tap into the same water sources identified by these ancient channels, implying knowledge passed down over millennia or rediscovered through similar observational methods. The Nubian sandstone aquifer system underlying Egypt, Libya, Chad, and Sudan contains an estimated 150,000 cubic kilometers of water, enough to cover these countries with 75 meters of water. This water fell as rain when the Sahara was savanna between 10,000 and 1 million years ago. Ancient texts and rock art suggest sophisticated understanding of this hidden water. Egyptian texts describe underground Niles, and Libyan rock art shows swimming figures in what's now hyper-arid desert. Recent archaeological excavations have uncovered evidence of advanced water extraction technologies dating back 5,000 years. These include fossil water wells reaching depths of 100 meters underground galleries, similar to Persian qanats and what appear to be ancient pumping stations. Some researchers propose these technologies enabled civilizations like the Garamantes to thrive in the Sahara for over 1,000 years until over-extraction depleted accessible aquifers. Easter Island's ecological mystery. Easter Island, one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth, presents an ecological puzzle that challenges our understanding of human-environment interaction. The conventional narrative claims the Rapa Nui people caused ecological collapse by cutting down all trees to transport their famous moai statues, leading to societal collapse. But recent archaeological and environmental evidence suggests a very different story, one where the Rapa Nui successfully adapted to one of Earth's most challenging environments for centuries only to be destroyed by external forces. New pollen analysis and soil studies show that Easter Island's deforestation was gradual, taking place over centuries rather than catastrophically. The introduction of Polynesian rats, which ate palm seeds, played a major role in preventing forest regeneration. But rather than collapse, the Rapa Nui adapted by developing innovative agricultural techniques. They created stone gardens that captured moisture and protected crops from wind-used volcanic rock mulch to retain soil nutrients, and developed crops suited to the changing environment. Population estimates have been dramatically revised. Rather than 15,000 people experiencing catastrophic collapse, evidence suggests a stable population of 3,000 to 4,000 people living sustainably until European contact. The real collapse came from slave raids in the 1860s that removed 1/3 of the population, including most holders of cultural knowledge, and introduced diseases that killed most survivors. Within a few decades, the population dropped to 111 people, a 97% decline caused entirely by external factors. The moai themselves encode environmental knowledge we're only beginning to understand. Their placement correlates with freshwater springs and agricultural zones. Some researchers propose they mark territories managed by different clans using distinct agricultural techniques. The statues might have served as demonstration sites for sustainable practices, with each clan competing to show prosperity through monument construction while maintaining ecological balance. These 15 cases represent just a fraction of the archaeological mysteries that challenge our understanding of human history and capability. From medical knowledge that surpasses modern treatments to engineering feats we can't replicate, from information systems that rival computers to maps showing impossible geography. Each discovery forces us to reconsider what we think we know about our ancestors. The pattern that emerges isn't one of primitive peoples slowly advancing toward modern enlightenment, but of sophisticated civilizations rising and falling, discovering and forgetting, achieving remarkable feats and losing the knowledge of how they did it. These mysteries remind us that human knowledge isn't always cumulative. Sometimes we forget more than we learn. As we face modern challenges, from climate change to antibiotic resistance, from information management to sustainable agriculture, these ancient achievements offer both inspiration and warning. They show that humans have always been capable of remarkable innovation, but also that knowledge is fragile. Civilizations are vulnerable, and what seems permanent can vanish in a generation. The question these mysteries collectively pose isn't just about the past, but about the future. If the Antikythera mechanism could be forgotten, if Damascus steel could be lost, if entire civilizations could vanish, leaving only enigmatic traces, What knowledge are we at risk of losing? And perhaps more importantly, what solutions to current problems might we find by seriously studying what our ancestors achieved? When we step back and examine these 10 mysteries collectively, patterns emerge that are perhaps more profound than any individual discovery. These aren't isolated anomalies scattered randomly across time and geography. They're pieces of a larger puzzle that suggests human civilization has followed a far more complex trajectory than our linear model of progress suggests. Consider the technological parallels across cultures that supposedly had no contact. The Olmec manipulation of magnetic fields in Mexico, occurring simultaneously with similar magnetic anomalies being incorporated into Chinese artifacts from the same period. The precision optics of the Assyrian lens coinciding with descriptions of similar devices in ancient Chinese and Roman texts. The hydraulic engineering of the Nazca Pukios, showing principles remarkably similar to Qanat systems in Persia, developed around the same time on opposite sides of the planet. These parallels suggest either that human innovation follows predictable patterns when facing similar challenges, or that ancient peoples were far more connected than we've believed, sharing knowledge through networks we haven't yet identified. The medical knowledge displayed in these discoveries reveals something even more intriguing. The Anglo-Saxon understanding of antibiotic synergy, the Inca mastery of antiseptic surgery, and similar advanced medical practices documented in ancient Egyptian, Chinese, and Indian texts all point to a sophisticated understanding of biological processes. These cultures didn't just stumble upon effective treatments through trial and error. They developed systematic approaches to medicine that, in some cases, surpass our own. They understood that healing involved complex interactions between multiple compounds, that the timing of treatments mattered, that the environment affected outcomes. This wasn't primitive empiricism, it was sophisticated observational science. The relationship between these ancient achievements and natural phenomena deserves special attention. The Olmec head's magnetic properties, the Nazca well's use of air pressure and temperature differentials, the possible earthquake-triggered appearance of Gafsa Lake all demonstrate that ancient peoples were keen observers of natural forces and clever manipulators of physical properties. They didn't need to understand magnetism through Maxwell's equations to use it effectively. They didn't need fluid dynamics theory to build functional hydraulic systems. They developed what we might call phenomenological knowledge, understanding based on careful observation of effects, rather than theoretical understanding of causes. The loss and rediscovery of knowledge forms another connecting thread. The Quipu system was destroyed by Spanish colonizers who saw it as pagan, taking with it centuries of accumulated information. The secret of moving Baalbek's megalithic stones was lost even to the Romans who built upon them. The formula for Roman concrete that grows stronger over time was forgotten until recently rediscovered. This pattern of knowledge loss isn't random. It often coincides with cultural disruption, conquest, or ideological shifts that devalue certain types of knowledge. The tragedy isn't just the loss of techniques, but the loss of entire ways of thinking and problem-solving. What's particularly striking is how many of these ancient solutions address problems we're facing today. Antibiotic resistance threatens to return us to a pre-penicillin world, yet ancient texts contain formulas for antimicrobial compounds we're only beginning to test. Climate change demands sustainable agriculture in increasingly arid regions, yet the Nazca demonstrated how to farm the desert over a millennium ago. Information management in our digital age faces challenges of storage retrieval and organization that the Inca solved with strings and knots. These aren't just historical curiosities. They're potential solutions to contemporary crises. The resistance these discoveries face from mainstream academia forms its own pattern. The Kaimanawa Wall dismissed without thorough investigation. The magnetic properties of Olmec heads relegated to footnotes in archaeological reports. The sophisticated engineering of Baalbek attributed to unknown methods and then largely ignored. This resistance isn't necessarily conspiracy or close-mindedness. It's the natural inertia of established paradigms. Thomas Kuhn described how scientific revolutions require not just new evidence, but a generational shift in thinking. These discoveries challenge not just specific facts, but entire frameworks for understanding human development. Perhaps most importantly, these mysteries collectively suggest that human potential has always been greater than we imagine. The brain surgeons of ancient Peru, the hydraulic engineers of Nazca, the data managers of the Inca Empire, they weren't fundamentally different from us in capability. They faced challenges and developed solutions using the same creativity, intelligence, and persistence that characterizes humanity today. What differed was their approach, their tools, and their worldview. They remind us that there are multiple paths to knowledge and multiple ways to solve problems. The question these connections raise isn't just about the past, but about the future. If ancient civilizations could achieve such sophistication without modern technology, what does that say about the relationship between technology and capability? If knowledge can be so thoroughly lost, what essential insights might we be losing today in our rush toward digitalization and specialization? And if ancient peoples could develop solutions to problems that still challenge us, shouldn't we be more humble about our own place in the story of human achievement? As we reach the end of this extraordinary journey through time and mystery, we're left with more questions than when we began, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. These 10 archaeological enigmas haven't just challenged our understanding of the past. They've fundamentally altered how we should think about human achievement, the nature of progress, and our relationship with knowledge itself. The ancient medicine that outperforms modern drugs, the prehistoric brain surgery with survival rates that wouldn't be matched for centuries, the information systems that rival computers. These aren't just interesting historical footnotes. They're proof that our ancestors were every bit as intelligent, creative, and capable as we are today. They simply applied their intelligence differently, developing solutions we're only now beginning to appreciate. The humbling truth is that if we were transported back to their time with their tools and their challenges, we likely couldn't replicate their achievements. Could you perform successful brain surgery with an obsidian blade? Could you calculate the precise gradient needed for an underground aqueduct stretching 50 kilometers? Could you identify which rocks contain magnetic fields and carve them to concentrate those fields at specific points? What these mysteries collectively reveal is that human knowledge doesn't follow the neat upward trajectory we see in our textbooks. It's more like a tide advancing and retreating with peaks of achievement followed by valleys of forgetting. The library of Alexandria burns and centuries of accumulated wisdom vanish in smoke. The Spanish conquistadors destroy the Quipu and an entire civilization's records disappear. Wars, conquests, ideological shifts, and natural disasters repeatedly reset humanity's knowledge base, forcing us to rediscover what previous generations knew. This pattern has profound implications for our modern world. We live in an age where we believe information is permanent, safely stored in digital formats, and backed up in the cloud. But digital storage is far more fragile than stone tablets or knotted strings. A major solar flare, an electromagnetic pulse, or simply the gradual degradation of storage media could erase more information in an instant than was lost in all of antiquity. The formats we use today might be unreadable in 50 years, let alone 500. Future archaeologists might puzzle over our hard drives, the way we puzzle over the Quipu, knowing they contain information but unable to access it. These discoveries also force us to reconsider what we mean by advanced and primitive. Todd. The Nazca people who built those spiral wells, were they primitive because they didn't have electric pumps? Or were they advanced because they created a sustainable water system that lasted 15 centuries? The Anglo-Saxons who developed that antibiotic recipe, were they backward because they didn't know about bacteria? Or were they sophisticated because they could achieve results we struggle to replicate? Perhaps the very notion of linear progress from primitive to advanced is itself a primitive idea, a comfortable myth that flatters our ego, but blinds us to the cyclical nature of human achievement. The implications extend beyond academic history into practical applications for our current global challenges. As climate change threatens water supplies, the Nazca Puquios offer lessons in sustainable desert agriculture. As antibiotic resistance spreads, ancient medical texts might contain our salvation. As we struggle with information overload, the Inca Quipu demonstrates elegant solutions to data management. As we face construction challenges in earthquake zones, Baalbek's seismic-resistant design provides inspiration. The past isn't just prologue, it's a repository of tested solutions to problems we're still trying to solve. Perhaps most importantly, these mysteries remind us of the value of intellectual humility. Every generation thinks it represents the pinnacle of human achievement, that previous generations were stepping stones to our current enlightenment. But the Inca brain surgeons were saving lives when European doctors were still bloodletting. The Olmec were manipulating magnetic fields when most of the world didn't know magnetism existed. The builders of Baalbek were moving stones we can't move today. If we can be wrong about the capabilities of our ancestors, what else might we be wrong about? As you reflect on these 10 mysteries, consider what they mean for your own understanding of human potential. They prove that innovation doesn't require modern technology, that careful observation can be as powerful as sophisticated instruments, that solutions can come from unexpected directions. They remind us that knowledge is fragile, that what seems permanent can vanish, that what seems impossible might just be forgotten. The greatest mystery of all might be this: what are we capable of that we haven't yet imagined? What problems could we solve if we approach them with the creativity of the Nazca, the patience of the Inca surgeons, the observational skills of the Anglo-Saxon healers? What could we achieve if we stopped assuming our way is the only way, or even the best way? I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Which of these mysteries resonated with you most strongly? What other archaeological enigmas do you think deserve investigation? And perhaps most intriguingly, what knowledge from our current era do you think might become a mystery to future generations? Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because our journey into the mysteries of the past has only just begun. The next discovery that rewrites history could be announced tomorrow, and you won't want to miss it when it does.